Hello and welcome to another video about some of my favourite things, and this video is about my favourite British comics. Not necessarily the best comics that have ever been produced, but my personal favourites. I was very blessed to have two parents who thought they ought to encourage me to read no matter what, and so they encouraged me from a very early age to read comics. And certainly I remember Robin and other comics like that at a very early age. And by the time I got to my late primary school, early secondary school, Saturday mornings were like heaven. I'd get 10, 11, even 12 comics arriving through the letterbox to read in bed on Saturday mornings, and it was bliss. And looking back over those years now, I can see that some of those comics perhaps weren't as good as I thought they were, but some still retain a place of affection. So I'm going to start off by some honourable mentions, in some cases perhaps dishonourable mentions, and then go through my top 10 favourite British comics. Starting with some of the honourable mention stuffs, this is the Sparky book from 1967, the first book. I have got the first issue of Sparky as well, and I really loved it. And later on there were some great characters like Elcars and Mr. Bubbles, about a fairy in a washing up bottle. Really exciting stuff that I really loved. But early days, the key character was Sparky, who was a native African character, and really the racism and the sort of stereotyping is pretty shocking looking back on it over the years. Front cover depicts the Moonsters, who are quite a lot of fun and very much in line with the Bleep and Booster characters from Blue Peter. Perhaps that's the vibe they were getting into. But I loved Sparky for many years, and I still look back on it with a great deal of affection. But it's an honourable mention. As a boy, I wasn't supposed to read girls' comics, but I did occasionally pick up girls' comics, and certainly later things like Misty were very good. But I still have a massive affection for Bunty. This is a summer special from I don't know when, and it's got the Five Marys in, which were the staple characters from the Bunty for many years. Just well drawn, really well written stories, nice historic sort of educational stuff coming through as well. Really good comic, and my daughters bought that, and I used to read them after they'd finished with them, and they got all the annuals and everything, which I still got. Another honourable mention to Bimbo, which was probably my favourite, I suppose, nursery type comic. This is an annual from 1975, but I've got comics going back much earlier than that, and the artwork is amazing. It's the stuff of art galleries, really. I used to love it, still love it, and all sorts of characters in here that are sort of memorable. When you look at them you think, oh yeah, I've seen these before, and you wonder who they are, like Baby Crockett, who later appears in the Beezer, and Tom Thumb. All good stuff. Wendy of Willow Tree Farm. Bimbo, still good fun. I used to have, as a child, a great love for Disney. I still have a great love for Disney, and one of my collections that I still maintain is Gold Key Disney comics. But there was a comic in my youth called Donald and Mickey. This is the Christmas special from somewhere in the 70s. It was just fun to see all your favourite Disney characters in one comic. Some were sort of reprinted stories, some were not, but lovely, nostalgic, and if I see one of these in a second-hand bookshop or anything like that, I will always pick up a copy of Donald and Mickey. And a very short-lived comic was Champion, and really it was a typical IPC magazine comic with lots of characters in it, but the reason I used to buy this comic was because of a character called the Phantom Viking, who appeared in a number of comics over a succession of years. The Phantom Viking was a cowardly teacher who found the helmet of a Norse god, and when he put it on, he became a superhero, much like Thor, whose powers disappeared when the winds blew in a particular direction. Wonderful stuff, still wonderful stuff, and this Champion Annual is still one of my favourite guilty pleasures and a bedtime read quite often. And another nursery comic, one of many published. This is Jack and Jill. Went on for ages. I've got comics going back to the early 60s. Just the quality of the artwork, the characters like Harold Hare, Jack and Jill themselves on their farm with their dog. Just beautiful to look at, lovingly drawn. There is an innocence and a nostalgia in reading these comics, and I love them. So those are my honourable mentions. So let's go through the top 10. And in number 10, published by DC Thomson, is the Beezer comic. This is the annual, or the Beezer book from 1972. I used to read the Beezer, I think it was out every Monday, and I used to get it in the really big format, sort of the A2 format maybe, or was it A3, I'm not sure, but it was a lovely comic. Ginger, the Bad Lads, the Banana Bunch, great characters, and always a lot of fun. I always used to think it was slightly more mature than some of the other comics that were around at the time. Still like it, still read it, and if I ever see an early Beezer book, I will certainly pick it up in a charity shop. In number 9 is the Dandy. This is a Dandy summer special. If there was one thing I really loved about the Dandy, and to some extent the Beano as well, it was the summer specials, these huge size colour things that I used to get, and the smell of the paper, the colour, it was also fantastic. And every year I used to get the Dandy book. This is 1972. I love the Dandy, still love the Dandy, still buy the Dandy book to this day, still laugh out loud at Corporal Clot and other characters such as this. Love the serious stories in here. Does anyone remember the Crimson Ball? That kind of thing. A great British comic published by DC Thomson. Wonderful stuff. At number 8, not a long-lived comic. This is TV Tornado. I recently just sold my entire collection to raise some funds for charity. TV Tornado, for me, was one of the most exciting comics out there. Not only did it have British TV characters like The Saint, it had American TV characters like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Bonanza, Superman and Batman in early episodes, Green Lantern, and introduced me to The Phantom and Flash Gordon. And my love affair with The Phantom as a comic character continues to this day. It eventually merged with TV21, and The Saint lived on for quite a while afterwards, but excellent stuff, and a really wonderful British comic, printed on terrible paper as I recall. Number 7, I think it is, another DC Thomson comic. This is The Topper. This is from 1969. I've got some Topper comics from the 50s, and anarchic, crazy, wacky, and some wonderful characters. A serious one called The Wizards from Oz, which I always really liked. Figaro, the inept Mexican bandit. Captain Bungle, he lives in the jungle. A rubbish big game hunter, and so on. Nick Kelly, Special Agent. I don't know why at the time, but I used to think he was the bee's knees and better than James Bond. And of course Foxy, who's on the front cover here. Mickey the Monkey. Beautifully drawn. This is one of my favourite comics. This is one of my favourite annuals, actually. Another guilty pleasure and bedtime read, particularly around about Christmas. This is the one I got for Christmas in 1969, so it'd be 1968. I got it when I was the age of 10. Wonderful. Next up is a comic called Thunder, which I really loved as a boy. Again, not very long lived. So this is a Thunder annual from 1973. There were 3 annuals. But what Thunder did was gave us some incredibly memorable characters. So Fury's family were great. The Steel Commando, who's on the cover here, who was just a real offbeat take on the Second World War story. Black Max, about First World War and a German breeding giant bats to fight the Allies. Incredible story, beautifully drawn, And one of the most enduring characters of all time in British comics, Adam Eterno, who is cursed with eternal life and goes from place to place in time, righting wrongs. Other stories, Gauntlet Fate was fantastic, and well, it was just so good. So that when it merged with other comics, like it did with Lion later on, it took most of the really good stuff with it. And then when Lion merged with somebody else, Valiant, again, the really good stuff from Thunder lived on. So highly commended comic. If you find any, well worth a look at. Just above it in the lists, and I've got a couple of examples here, Lion, which merged with Thunder, Lion and Thunder special here with Adam Eterno on the front cover. This is Lion Annual from 1972, which is the one I actually got, with Zip Nolan, an American policeman, on the front, a sort of whodunit type story that happened each week. I loved Lion. It had science fiction, it had something called Spellbinder, drawn by Jeff Campion, which was a wonderful sort of cat weasel type story. It had lots and lots of really good stories about football. I'm just thinking if it's gone here, yeah, Carson's Cubs, about a boys football team. Dan Dare was in here from time to time. Lots and lots of characters. Absolutely wonderful comic, and much missed. And I will always pick up a copy of a Lion comic or a Lion book, and if you can find a holiday special, they are exceedingly rare and very expensive. Just outside my top three now, I think, in fourth place is a nursery comic, believe it or not, Pippin. This is a holiday special, which is rather lovely, and an annual from 1976. It lasted a long time, Pippin. It was a very popular children's comic. Mary Mungo and Midge, Andy Pandy, Camberwick Green, Trumpton, Sooty and Sweep, Barnaby the Bear, The Herbs, you name it. Those parts of your childhood that you loved and remember were all in Pippin, and they were beautifully drawn. And don't know if any of you know the artist Neville Main, who was the mainstay for Polystar Publications and drew a lot of these. His drawings are just fabulous, and I would buy any book with his art in, and they're brilliant in Pippin. So Pippin just outside that top four. Top three. In number three, we have TV21, and this is an annual from 1971, and I have to admit that my love for TV21 is for the later issues rather than the early ones, the ones with Stingray and Thunderbirds and all the Jerry Anderson stuff. I like, but never loved. But when it merged with Joe 90 and then started to develop its own strips, and it reproduced a few Marvel comics in there, and the Lone Ranger and Ringo, and had a football story in, and it had The Saint and Star Trek. It was in the later issues that I really grew to love it, and I thought it was fabulous, inventive, brave, daring, and endlessly entertaining. So in third place, TV21. In second place, we have TV Comic, which is another Polystyle contribution with, again, art by Neville Main. It's a holiday special from, I don't know, 1969, and an annual from 1970. Everyone you loved on TV was in here. So Popeye, Laurel and Hardy, Mighty Moth, not from TV but character, Doctor Who, The Avengers in some episodes. I just loved it, continue to love it, and love the artwork. And what was great about it is it used to spawn loads of holiday specials. So things like the Basil Brush holiday special, very funny, and my personal favourites, which are very hard to come by, the Popeye holiday specials. a wonderful comic that lasted well over 1,000 issues. I'm not sure how many. I'm very sad when it finished. But top of my list, and really for surprising reasons, is Smash, which wouldn't be everybody's first thought of a favourite British comic. Smash was part of what was called the Power Comics set, so there was Fantastic and Terrific, Pow, Wham and Smash, all really recreating Marvel strips, Fantastic and Terrific in particular. Smash also had some DC strips in there, Batman was in there, the Hulk from Marvel and so on, but when it dropped those and started to produce its own material, that's when things got really interesting. And I just thought it was wonderful. And it was wonderful for me in particular for two strips. The one on the front cover of here, which is His Sporting Lordship. I don't know what it was about IPC, but they often had people inheriting great big piles of masonry, you know, posh houses, but they had to do something every year in order to maintain their title, like win a cup every year or take part in different activities or achieve certain goals, and His Sporting Lordship was just that. But it was great fun and really wonderful, and I loved it. Smash also had this annual has the Master of the Marsh, which was a school teacher who was also almost a supernatural dweller in the local marsh. Who else was in Smash that I really liked? There was Q Squad, which was one of the traditional sort of war stories, which was also very good. Sergeant Rock, Mooney's Magic Mate, about a genie, but best of all, absolutely best of all, and probably, in my opinion, the greatest character created in British comics, Janus Stark, the Victorian escapologist. If ever there was a comic character waiting for a TV series, it's Janus Stark, and if ever there was an actor born to play that, it's David Tennant, currently the 14th Doctor. I recently bought the sort of complete works of Janus Stark, which has been republished, and every story is an absolute gem. And I know that Smash has been reprinted, republished with new stories fairly recently as well, just odd specials, and the characters brought about, and they're very good, but they don't quite have the magic of this. So there you are, there's my favourite British comics brought to you as some of my favourite things. In a future video I'll look at some of my favourite American comic books, and again maybe a few surprises in there. But thank you for watching.